All right, so welcome everyone to Bray School Stories. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time this evening, my name is Elizabeth Drembus, and I'm the genealogist with the William and Mary Bray School Lab. And I'm going to do our little explanation of why we're here and what our purpose is. So in service to the Bray School Lab's mission of uncovering, documenting, and preserving and disseminating the history and the legacies of the Williamsburg Bray School, we host a monthly series on Zoom in order to share recent genealogical findings, engage the descendant community in this work, and to broaden our understanding of those legacies, and enlist the help of historians, genealogists, as well as the general public in furthering the conversations and the research surrounding the Williamsburg Bray School. The title of the monthly series is Bray School Stories, and this evening's focus is Seeking the Ashbys Through Fresh Eyes. And for those of you who were able to join us in September, we really had a long conversation about just where the research was taking us with the Ashby family, with the Ashby lineage, the three children who attended the Bray School, Harry, John, and Mary. And then we just kind of left off at the end of that we had this gap in time. And so we're picking that back up this evening in this evening's session. So once again, we are recording this session. It will be available later on our YouTube channel. To find it, simply Google Bray School Lab YouTube. Again, if you prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to access this later on our YouTube channel. I am thrilled that I am joined this evening by Nylah Jordan. Nylah is working with the Bray School Lab as part of the NIAD internship in public history. And I'm excited that she will share her work from this semester. And I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of things to bring to your attention, and then I'm going to introduce Nylah properly. But our monthly sessions are designed to spark conversation. And so Nylah's going to be doing some talking. I'm going to be sharing some information. Then we both are going to be sharing some. We ask this time if you might want to hold your questions and comments to the end. We really just appreciate it. We have a lot to go over, and we really want to make sure that we share as much as we can this evening with you. So, all right, let's get started. We had, just want to share with everybody, I don't know whether you heard me talking with Mr. Levine. We had a wonderful, wonderful Descendants Week last week. We had some social gathering time. We had a new identified member of the descendant community come all the way from Georgia. And so we were able to Colonial Williamsburg was very gracious that since she hadn't been able to be here for the dedication ceremony, we were able to take her to the school building. And we also did a lot of work in the lab. I think that Friday we spent, what, Nylah, like 4 hours pouring through everything we could to really start to pull those genealogical lines together from Miss Burwell in Georgia to Stoneland Plantation in Mecklenburg County, and then to back to the Williamsburg Bray School. We still have a little bit more work to do on that. And then on Saturday, we had a lovely opportunity to really hear from the elders in the descending community, and they shared a lot of their wisdom about resistance and resilience, particularly in this moment that we're living in. And they were just very gracious to share that wisdom with us. So I just wanted to just kind of give you an update on how Descendants Week was and give you some photos from what the week entailed. One thing I want to bring to your attention, this Friday is a new podcast is dropping, a new episode of the Strategic Cultural Partnerships podcast. You know, we get a lot of fun and interesting people who come through our doors at Barrett House and Travis House. And our SCP colleagues are taking the opportunity to sit down with them and ask them one question with. And so this episode is available this coming Friday, and it's going to feature a conversation with Peggy Agoras, who is the 6th provost of William and Mary. So I recommend that to you, and you can access that podcast wherever you get your podcasts, however you do that. On Saturday, there's going to be a very special program. It's the 4th annual Blessing of Reverence. And Johnette or Leslie, I don't know whether you are here. If you are, I'd be happy to have you take the mic and kind of share about this program. I don't think they're in here yet. But I do recommend, if you are in Williamsburg this weekend, this Saturday at 10 o'clock, we'll be gathering at Cedar Grove Cemetery to remember the ancestors. And then courtesy of Williamsburg History, a program will follow at Oak Grove Church. And it's really going to be focused on the York descendant families. And I definitely plan to be there to see if there's any information that we can hear about that will help the work in the lab. So that's this Saturday, May 3rd at 10 o'clock. This summer, I'm going to recommend a genealogy workshop that's happening on Saturday, July 19th. The Lemon Project, in partnership with the Bray School Lab and university libraries, will be hosting a one-day hybrid event. There are about 70 spots available for in-person, and then a limited number of for hybrid to join us. And so it's going to be just really genealogy focused. There'll be folks from the Library of Virginia attending. Nika Sewell-Smith is going to be presenting as well. She'll be in person. She is from Ancestry. I'm going to give a little bit of presentation highlight on what's been going on in the Bray School Lab. But also the library is going to be hosting a genealogy showcase and reception. And this is going to be where attendees can share their own genealogical research and showcase family heirlooms. So I recommend this wonderful opportunity to engage with fellow researchers, exchange stories, as well as celebrate family history. So those are all the to-dos, and those are all the things coming up. So I think I'm going to now introduce our very special guest. So Nylah Jordan is a senior at William and Mary, and this is last week of classes for her. So this is a pretty exciting time. Nylah is majoring in anthropology with a primary interest in sociocultural anthropology and minoring in sociology. She is a student in the NIAD program, and that's the National Institute of American History and Democracy. And that's how she came through that internship program to intern with me, where she is committed to uncovering, preserving, and telling the stories of marginalized communities through public history. This fall, she will continue her education at George Mason University, pursuing a master's degree in anthropology. She plans to concentrate on sociocultural anthropology with a research focus on enslaved African American communities, social institutions and injustices, and systemic inequality, particularly as they relate to activism and power dynamics. She is a powerhouse. And folks, I'm so excited to be able to have her share her research. I basically was happy to invite her into the lab. And I really just kind of said, I need help with the Ashby family. And I just kind of turned that over to her. So I'm going to turn the mic over to her, and she's going to share a little bit about what she's been doing and also what she's been finding.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for all attending. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that wonderful introduction. I just want to say also, I want to thank Dr. Richter as well, because she was the one that was able to allow me to connect with the Bray School here at William and Mary. So just thankful for her. So I was particularly interested in the Bray School through the NIAD program, as Elizabeth have already said, because it focuses on particularly public history and material culture. So it directly relates to my major, anthropology. If you can move on to the next slide, please. All right, so when I first came here to the Bray School, it was very important that Elizabeth introduced me into what exactly is the Bray School, what is the initiative, what's the mission, what's the goals, right? So she first began with some onboarding material. So it had a strong foundation in the preliminary research of the Williamsburg Bray School, the scholars, and its significant ties to William and Mary. I particularly researched and examined In Pursuit of Letters by Antonio Bly, and as well the preliminary Williamsburg Bray School historical report by Nicole Brown, which is another person that works in the Bray School. She's wonderful, by the way. So this gave me a very strong foundation on what is currently known about the Bray School and what gaps that we need to basically address. So whether that was watching various oral histories from the Bray School, from the Swim Library Research Portal, or whatever I was tasked with initially to really get a really strong understanding of what the Bray School is and what it entails and what their goals are. So just a quick research lesson, or I'm sorry, a quick history lesson of what exactly the Bray School is. So from 1760 to 1774, it was active by Ann Wager. She was the teacher of the William and Mary Bray School, the Williamsburg Bray School, excuse me. And it was run, or it was initially created by Dr. Thomas Bray and his associates. It was originally used for religion purposes to assimilate people of African descent into the New World. Now, this may have been the goal, but this was not necessarily the outcome of what the Bray School was. A lot of people, by people, I mean the enslavers, had mixed feelings about sending their enslaved people to the school. So this is when Benjamin Franklin stepped in order to basically use his stature to encourage these enslavers to allow their children to attend the Williamsburg Bray School. So they were initially just scared of educating them. And like I said before, Benjamin Franklin was well known for his stature and was able to convince them that it was okay for them to go, and primarily for it to be to make them more malleable, to make them just more better as servants, right? So it's not necessarily to have the goal of educating them, but to make them better for them, as well as the enslaved labor, right? So according to Antonio Bly, the reading, because they were educated, held the promise of writing, and writing held the opportunity of freedom. So these Bray School scholars had the opportunity to learn, and they used that learning to the best advantage, and they educated themselves as well as they educated the people around them. And this was very important, of course, and this is why we are conducting the research we are today, because they used this education for the good and they made the best out of the situation that they had. So during this time, many of the scholars came from wealthy families from all over the counties, but predominantly in the York and James City counties. And we think, or we believe, that there was well over 300 children that were taught here, but we only have 3 attendance sheets with 87 names. Um, it's also very important for me to understand how to conduct genealogy research, right? We can't understand genealogy if you don't know what it is. So Elizabeth was able to give me a little genealogy 101 class. So here I am to do the same thing to you. All right. So genealogy 101, the study of where we come from. Think about like the origins and things along that nature, right? So a combination of records, oral histories, and or DNA. But in the case of the Williamsburg Bray School, that is not the case, right? We don't have DNA. They did not have that type of technology back then. So we are trying to use primary and secondary sources to trace that lineage from the Bray School scholars to present day. So leading on to that, the descendant community engagement is very prominent, right? We are not able to conduct this type of research without the collaborative approach and engagement of community members and descendant members of the Ashbys, as well as any supporters that are just trying to help as well. However, that does come with some gaps, right? So this is during the 1700s and the 1800s. It's not much going on around here, as well as people do not know how to stop fires. So we have had 3 different fires. So in 1790, there was a fire and it was burned by the British during the War of 1812. So this burned a lot of primary resources. As well as in 1800, we're missing primary sources for all but 2 Virginia counties. So missing sources from there as well. And then in 1810, we're missing primary sources for 17 counties, including James City County, which is a prominent county for the Williamsburg Bray School. So all in all, just to say that For my primary focus, Elizabeth tasked me to go through some genealogical research and attempting to close the gap between the late 19th century and the early 20th century, connecting to the current descendants of the Bray School Scholars. So just right here in the picture is just an original bricks in Brown Hall, which is where the Bray School was located inside of. And yeah, you can move on to the next slide, please. Perfect. So now I had the task of really taking a deep dive into archival records. And man, what I tell you, it's not easy reading this cursive at all, especially some people just don't know how to write properly sometimes. But it was it's very useful to really understand and contextualize the Bray School scholars, as well as trying to figure out, direct lineage and just conducting genealogical research. So the first archives I was tasked to examine was the Bruton Parish Register. I was to search for any baptism records post 1771 for any Ashby members, but unfortunately fortunately, but unfortunately, I did not find any new information. The reason why I say that is because this just confirms that there wasn't anything missing. So previously somebody has already looked over these records, made sure that there was nothing there. So I was just tasked with just double checking behind them. Like we've said that this, Zoom is titled is Fresh Eyes. I am that pair of fresh eyes. So it's not going to hurt for somebody else to just go over the same archival records. So I did that and I didn't find anything. So yay, we're not missing nothing. The next thing I was tasked was trying to define which Matthew Ashby was who was his parents. He was apprenticed to John Cole, which was a shoemaker, and after some time, I want to say like a month later, I will talk about the York County project later, but the York County project records, we were able to find out and trace him back to around his birthday. And it just really helped us trying to figure out, and pinpoint when he might have been born, who his parents was. And all of this is important to connect it back to that genealogical research and to pinpoint, who is his direct lineages. How can we figure out his family members and everybody that was surrounding him, right? Another one I had to look at was the judgment and order books, and this was not easy as well, like I've said. But I was looking at George and or any type of Ashby name, just looking for anything that could relate to the 18th century documents, right? And fortunately, but unfortunately, like I'll say again, I did not find any new information, but it just goes back to show like there is nothing that we are missing. And then another type of archival record that I examined is the will of Matthew Ashby. So in November of 1769, Matthew Ashby petitioned to free his wife Anne and John and Mary. Now, this was very helpful because we were able to see the archival records of when he petitioned to free his wife as well as his children underneath the enslaver Samuel Spur. Now, this will prove to be an important person as well as we will continue to go throughout the Zoom. Okay. And then the images over here is just from the Bruton Parish records of Richard Jones belonging to Samuel Spur in 1766. I'll go back to that again. I told you Samuel Spur will be important. Okay, you can go on to the next slide. So then I took a deep dive into the Rockefeller Library collection. So that's not too far from William and Mary. So me and Elizabeth, we took a trip there. We did some good deep diving, a whole bunch of looking, a whole bunch of concentrating, and yeah. So I was looking at the Ashby archives, right, into the special collections of the Rockefeller Library. And then through this research, we were just able to confirm some birth dates and just cross-check and cross-reference these birth records with our baptism records from the Bruton Parish Register. So just being able to just cross-reference what we already know with other archival records just helps reaffirm what we already think. Again, a lot of primary sources are missing, so it's kind of hard to really double check to see if this is what we really know or not. A lot of genealogical work is probability and not 100% certainty. So by cross-checking these references, we are able to really understand and contextualize the information that we already have. So then I took a deep dive into the Cole lineage. particularly John Cole, which again was was who Matthew Ashby was apprenticed to, right? So during these records, I did find a Thomas Cole, which we don't know for sure or not whether Thomas Cole is related to John Cole. Hopefully we can find more information about that, but as of right now, we're not too sure whether they are related or not. So Thomas Cole was an orphan who was apprenticed to John Cole the exact same day as Matthew Ashby. So we believe that they could have known each other. Most likely they did know each other because they were apprenticed to the same person who was a master shoemaker during the same time on the exact same date. So on February 15th of 1779, Thomas Cole, as well as Matthew Ashby, was apprenticed to John Cole. However, there is a big difference between Thomas Cole and Matthew Ashby. On December 27th of 1783, Thomas Cole was done with his apprenticeship because at this time he would have been 21. So usually, or at least for the records that we have found, 21 was the age that they were finished with their apprenticeship as a shoemaker. So just to do some math really quickly, right? So February 15th, 1779, that's when Matthew Ashby started his apprenticeship with John Cole. They said that he had to be 21 in order for him to finish his apprenticeship. So doing the math, we subtracted 7 because he did a 7-year long apprenticeship because he was done. I don't have the date right off the top of my head, but he was done 7 years later, right? So he was estimated 14 years old when he started his apprenticeship with John Cole. And this was basically based on family information as well as the York County Project records. And then finally, I took a deep dive into the Spur lineage, who was the ones that enslaved Anne and their children, John and Mary. So there's 2 different Samuel Spurs. Another thing to note, when it comes to genealogical research, everybody has the same name. A thing is usually they want to honor their family members, so they will keep their same name. So going through this research during this whole semester, I can tell you there's like 1,000,001 Johns, 1,000,001 Matthews, 1,000,001 Williams. It's just a lot of the same name, right? So there's 2 different Samuel Spurs, but with the York County Project, we were able to basically see based on their birth dates which Samuel Spur it may potentially be. So just for clarifications reasons, their name is not necessarily senior or junior, but just to make it easier for you to understand, I'm going to use that terminology. So in December 15th of 1705, Samuel Spur Sr. was married to Elizabeth. And then in December 15th of 1740, that's when Samuel Jr. was married to Anne. So just based off of those dates alone, we were able to kind of do the math and figure out which Samuel Spur most likely enslaved John and John's children and his wife Anne. And just to know also, when I went to the Rockefeller Library collections, the Cole and Spur records were never looked at. So I was the first one to look at them. So that's kind of like a big accomplishment for me, like woo woo. So you can move on to the next slide. Okay, so just finally, just to wrap everything up, like I said before, the repetition of name to honor family members has made it difficult to try to pinpoint different Bray School scholars and their descendants. However, this will not hinder our research or try to stop us from, really trying to take a deep dive into how Bray School scholars are tied to present day descendant communities. So that won't stop anything. It makes it difficult, but I promise you it will not stop anything. We will still continue to do the work. Another thing, I really enjoyed working with Elizabeth. She was so amazing. She's just a breath of fresh air. It's just so easy to conversate with her and work with her. So during this whole semester, I really enjoyed every Monday and every Friday getting to see her face. Just starting the week with her and ending the week with her, it's been so amazing. And also I want to add that I'm her first intern. So yeah, that's a great thing. But just understanding altogether, understanding the importance of taking a deep dive into the archival records and telling the narrative and of the Bray School scholars and their descendants. and I'm going to pass it on to Elizabeth to continue the Zoom.
All right. Thank you, Nylah. Folks, Nylah, first of all, she did know how to read 18th century handwriting when she landed on our doorstep. So that was a huge plus. And right, she had not done genealogical research before, but she picked it up because she is super smart and super quick and asks all the really good questions. And it was just a pleasure working with her and just to be able to say, look at these records. This has been on my to-do list, the Cole records, the Spur records, see what you can find. And so it's been really a pleasure working with her. And I'm going to show you at the end of this kind of what we really were able to pull together. But while I want to kind of also tell you that while she was working on all of this, I also was getting some more new Ashby information. And so what I want to show is here. So this is an example of a descendant community member collaborating with another descendant community member and then sharing that information with me and seeing where we could go with it. Mr. Brunel Irby was at the Lemon Symposium in March on a panel with Theodora Ashby and Johnette Weaver and Janice Kennedy. And Mr. Irby came and said, I think I found a Mary Ashby in the Southern Claims Commission. Have you looked at this yet? And I hadn't gone that far ahead in time because that's 1860s, 1870s, and I was still mired back in the 1810s and 1820s. But I said, you know what? Let me take a look. And sure enough, was able to find the packet of information on Mary Ashby. So where are we going to go with this? Well, first of all, let me share with you where to find these. These are Southern Claims Commission papers. And so when people at the end of the Civil War, if the government or the Army had taken, requisitioned, or if material goods had been donated to the cause of the Civil War in the Union side, people could go and petition and make a claim to be reimbursed for what had been either taken or donated or lost. And so in the Ancestry catalog, you'd want to just kind of type in keyword Southern Claims Commission. You're going to find these three different groups of records. And the Mary Ashby one comes from the allowed claims. And so once you hit on the allowed claims, you're going to be able to browse through the image on the, it's going to be a right-hand column. You're going to choose Virginia. I chose York County. I had two choices of surname letters, either A or C. That's all they've got in those records. And sure enough, I pressed on A and there comes up roll 45 for Mary Ashby. So what do these records entail? What could we learn from them? Let me show you where we were able to go with this. So this is part of the deposition that Mary Ashby had to give. There's many pages in here. I can't remember offhand whether it was a dozen, maybe 15 pages. And so there were depositions from neighbors who were going to support her claim, records from the Army for the goods that had been kind of requisitioned from her, which ended up being a horse and a cart or a wagon. And so she was deposed and was asked a series of questions. And from those answers, we were able to learn quite a bit about Mary Ashby and her family. So we were able to find out that she lived near Williamsburg in York County. She owned 27 acres of land. Her occupation was housekeeping when her horse was taken, and she moved into the Union lines at Yorktown, Virginia, and remained there until Richmond fell in 1865. And she doesn't really recollect which year. But already we know that York County is prominent. We know she was a landowner, and we know she was free. She also said that she, from the beginning of the hostilities to the end of the war, her sympathies always lied with the Union. And her husband was a free man of color, and she was also free-born, and her husband had no vote. And just this little bit gives you a sense of what she is sharing. It also doesn't name her husband. But if we know that she is a Mary Ashby, Ashby is probably not her maiden name. We don't know for sure, but we now know that it's her husband's name that we're probably looking for, but she doesn't name him. However, she does name 3 children. She names her children John, Sarah, and Renison Ashby. She gives their ages. And then she goes on to say that the property belonged to my husband long before the war. My husband died the first year of the war commenced. My children are interested in this claim. My brother, William Scott, is administrator of my husband's. So there we go. Here we go on the genealogical lines. We've got children. We've got her brother, which means we've got a maiden name for Mary Ashby. So where are we going to go with this next? Well, what we're going to want to do is see if we can find Mary in the census record. The deposition was taken in 1872, so the census closest to that is 1870. And sure enough, here's William Scott, and here's Mary Ashby. And now, even though in the 1870 census that doesn't name what the relationships are, we know from her deposition that Mary Ashby is living with her brother. And sure enough, there are the children, John and Sally. Renison is not listed. A William is listed, and then a Nicholas is also listed. And so it's curious that 2 years later, William and Nicholas aren't part of that deposition. We're still kind of working on that. Also on this page of the census from York County, we see a John Ashby with his wife Parthenia. And then we also have an Elizabeth Ashby who's 10 years old living with the Alvis family. So again, as Nylah was going through these records and I'm going through more records, we're collecting all these names of Ashbys and we're trying to sort them out and figure out what the relationships are and what other records are available for us to look in. I had a little bit easier time because we were a little bit later in time than Nylah had. So I was in the 1870s and 1872 and 1860s. And so it got a little bit easier for me. So I had a little bit more success. We were curious about William and why he wasn't in the deposition. And what we found in the death registers was that William Ashby actually died in September of 1870. And he was 11 years old and he died by drowning in the York River. And while this is really hard and sad to think of an 11-year-old drowning, the record also was able to provide us the name of his father. And so we have, as Nylah was saying, we have another Matthew Ashby, but Matt Ashby and Mary Ashby are his family, or his parents. And we know that he was born near Blessingham's, which we believe is either an area or a farm, name of the farm, or name of the precinct, and that the parents' occupation was oysterman. And by 1870, Mary Ashby is listed in that death register as the head of the family, because we know at that point she was widowed, having given the deposition in 1872 that her husband died during the first year of the war. So then we were able to kind of start to build this family tree together. So knowing the Scott family line, knowing the Ashbys, now the Matthew Ashby, we wanted to see what else we could find. If we can go backwards in time, if we could see how far we could go back. We were able to find Mary Scott in her marriage record to Matt Ashby. They got married in December of 1854. And of course, we have the name of her father and we have the name of her mother. When we clicked on the link from Matt Ashby, we were able to find his parents' names. His parents are Harry Ashby and Tisha Ashby. And for those of you who were with us in September, when we were going through all those marriage bonds in York County, we found back then that Henry Ashby and Letitia Ashby were married in York County in March of 1821. So because of what we had before, because of being able to go forward and because of great descendant collaboration, we were able to start to bring this lineage together. What we started to notice was who was signing that marriage bond. We have Henry Ashby leaving his mark, and then a James Ashby. And James starts to be curious. We have many entries of a James Ashby in lots and lots of records, but we don't know his connection to the Ashby family exactly, where he fits in, who he is as far as a parent or a son or an uncle. And so we started to really kind of take a closer look at James Ashby. Meanwhile, we were able to put together this family tree for the Mary Ashby of the Southern Claims Commission and her children. And then we were able to take her daughter Sally Ashby, married to William Allen, and we were able to find their two children. And we were able to go as far as 1945. But we were able to go back as far as 1798 because we knew from the Guardian account book, Henry Ashby and Letitia Ashby had both registered with the clerk as free people of color. We had their ages in 1822, which gave us then a birth year for Henry and Letitia Ashby. And as a side note, we know that Mary Ashby, who was the widow of Matt Ashby in the 1870s, she had married a George Red Cross in August of 1867. We don't see her with him in the 1870 census, but we now know that the Red Cross family is going to be connected in with the Scotts and with the Ashby family. So the question again is, who are the parents of Henry Ashby and Letitia Ashby? This has become a whole nother lineage that we didn't have back in September, a whole nother line of Ashbys. And so I was doing some looking online, and one online tree suggests that perhaps that James Ashby might be the father of Henry. And so we use that as a clue, but there was no source, no documentation to make that link. But we are looking into it. And again, we started really taking a look closely at James Ashby. Diving back into the records again, we have tax list entries beginning in 1785 for James Ashby. His name appears on two other marriage bonds, Anthony Peters and Ann Carter in 1786, Susanna Ashby and Littleton Carter in 1818, and Henry and Letitia Ashby we just showed in 1821. And what's curious about Virginia marriage records is normally it's the groom who's signing and then somebody from the bride's side of the family. So either a father, a brother, an uncle, some sort of relation. So I'm actually more inclined to think that James Ashby might be more of a relation to Letitia Ashby than being the father of Henry Ashby. It's just a theory. It's just what I'm thinking, just based on how the records were supposed to be, who the witnesses and the signers are supposed to be. Because Henry and Letitia were born got married in 1821, we started looking at the 1820 census for York County. We have 3 potential fathers for them. James Ashby, of course, a Philip Ashby, and a Matt Ashby. And of course, in the 1820 census, all you have are ages and genders. So we don't really know who's living in that household, but we're going to still take a closer look and see where we might be able to find some connections. So this is just, while we're not coming up with lots of conclusions and aha moments to share this evening, we are trying to show just kind of how the work is done and be real transparent about the work in the lab and how we are being very careful with trying to find these lineages back to these Bray School scholars. So from September, this is what we were left with. We left off knowing that we had Matthew and his brother John Ashby, Matthew being the father of the Bray School children, John Ashby of his children, and that gave us a time frame of about 1727 when we first see them in the records to about 1796. And then we had worked all the other lineages that we had starting, and as far back as we had gotten was 1812. But now we can add this one in as well. And again, these are 5 separate lines, and we still haven't found that common ancestor yet. We're working on it, but the gap is starting to get closer and closer. We're hoping that we're going to be able to bring these families all back together and sort out everybody with their right parents. So I wanted to be able to share that. The other thing that I tasked Nylah with, and I'm going to have her talk, we've got a little bit of time that we're going to be able to, what we had was a whole bunch of entries, and we are still collecting names. And so before I get to that, I want to make sure that you all are aware of the family search full text search. This is using artificial intelligence to go through records and find names. It's getting better and better. It was only a couple of records that they started out this experiment with, but it's getting better and more records are being added. And so I wanted to share just some of the things that we've been finding when we put James Ashby or Matthew Ashby into the text search. And so what we are kind of, we were still doing this last week. So we're trying to, as fast as we could, to compile all of this information before tonight. So we're finding things like a James Ashby in 1836. He's mentioned as being deceased, and his son, John Ashby, is being bound out to a William Orrs. And so, again, we've got a little bit of a hit on a James Ashby, and now we have his son, Ashby, or son, John. This was a fascinating record that popped up in 1850 for a Sally Ashby. We always wonder what happened if they lost their free papers. The Ashby family members are registering with the county clerks. They're getting their papers that shows and proves their free status. But this was a record of Sally Ashby who had either lost or her papers were burned, and she had to go back into court and they had to reissue her papers. This is the first time I'd seen a record like this that really showed somebody having to return to court to get those free papers reissued. This record from 1799 shows a John Ashby and Matthew Ashby as defendants in a court case. The petition was dismissed, and they had to pay the costs of the court costs. But this puts a John Ashby with a Matthew Ashby in 1799 in that little gap that we are still trying to prove. And then in 1795, we see James Ashby as a witness for Anthony Roberts against a Daniel Lyon. So these are the types of records that are just popping up. Not a lot of relationships stated in many of them, but if we could put all of the hits that we have in some sort of logical, organized manner, maybe my thought was that we could actually start to see a pattern and see, based on dates and places, some of the relationships being formed. So that was the other thing that I tasked Nylah with, was to create a big timeline of all the Ashby names that we had collected. So I'm going to turn this back over to her, and she's going to share in the maybe 5 to 10 minutes that we have. So I want to definitely leave time for questions, but I want her to be able to show this work that she was able to do.
Yes, thank you again, Elizabeth. So this is a short version, kind of, sort of like the timeline. It was originally on a wall, a big white wall, in the Bray School Lab. And I mean, we had different color markers, trying to pinpoint different Ashbys, just, it was a lot, but it was beautiful if you ask me. But so just gonna note a couple things because it is a pretty long timeline. So in 1727, that was basically the Ashby starting point for us. Sorry, yeah, she was an indentured servant, and the father was unknown of Matthew Ashby and John Ashby. Another important year was 1765, where Harry and John attended the Bray School. So again, we're just looking at the Bray School Scholars. So this was an important year to really understand and contextualize when the Bray School scholars did attend, and who their relations may be. So Matthew Ashby would be or is the father of Harry and John, who attended the Bray School. A couple other births of Ashby descendant lines. In 1771, Matthew Ashby was deceased, which is the husband of Anne, who was freed by Matthew Ashby. And then they were the enslaved underneath Samuel Spur. And yes, in 1774, John Ashby starts renting land.
Sorry.
No, you're good. That was perfect.
Okay.
All right. In 1776, we see John Ashby Sr. Again, this just says senior, so that way we can see it for clarification, not necessarily that that was his name. Was deceased. Unknown and unnamed orphan were bound out by the church wardens. In 1777, we see a John Ashby on payroll. Now, it's very important for us to note the year of 1777 for John Ashby, because there are multiple John Ashbys. There's the John Ashby that's a Bray School scholar, and then there's the John Ashby that was in the Continental Army. We don't believe this to be the same John Ashby, but of course, everything is still a working theory. But we don't believe as of right now that they are the same John Ashbys. And let's see, 1779, Matthew Ashby, like I've talked about before, starts his apprenticeship with John Cole. And in, let's see, 1784, John Cole is seen with a Harry and a Matt Ashby. Now, Harry's last name is not on the documents, so we're not sure if that is Harry Ashby or not, but there is in Harry seen with Matt Ashby during the time that Matthew was still apprenticed to John Cole. And then in 1786, Matthew Ashby completes his apprenticeship. Like I've said before, this just really helped us trace back to, how old was he when he started it, when he might have been born, who his parents were, all of the things along those lines. All right. And then trying to see which ones should be talked about. Oh, I'm going to turn this over to Elizabeth. She's going to talk a little bit more about the important years during this specific period of the timeline.
Okay. So a lot of this at this point is coming from tax records and also the Guardian accounts in York County, which is when free people of color were registered with the county clerk. They said their ages, and so a lot of these births we are getting from those initial records, so that we're able to find, based on their ages, what their birth would have been. We have in 1794. I'm having trouble saying, there we go. Ashby's in New York. We have James and John and Matthew are all named in York County. And in 1795, we've got a Henry Ashby in James City County. And we understand that those boundaries are a little fluid. Sometimes we see we don't really very often see a lot of Ashbys in James City County. Henry Ashby in 1795 is almost the exception. And in 1796, a Henry Ashby marries a Susanna Jones, and a John Ashby is named as the witness of the marriage. They are named as of James City County, but the marriage record is recorded in York County. And a lot of times you'll see people living in one area, but recording documents into another county. And sometimes it's just a matter that the courthouse is just closer than going to the other county courthouse. But that 1795, 1796, we're looking at that Henry Ashby. And like we said, when we put the timeline together of this new Ashby lineage, 1798 is the birth of a Henry Ashby. We're not real sure what to make of that. We don't know for sure whether, his parents are just not known at this point. We're having some theories, but we still need to go through some more of those records. And so those were kind of the highlights from that time period. It does give me hope that once we're starting to look at this and we're starting to see all the different hits and where people are and what their possible ages might be, if they're listed as an orphan, if they're listed as deceased, or adult or versus child. So those are kind of the working theories there. Are we ready to go to the next one, Nylah?
Yes.
Okay. And so then this is the last page of the timeline. And the reason we ended it in 1813 is because in September, when we were talking about the Ashbys, at that point, that was the furthest back we were able to go to an Ashby with a complete line up to the present time. So I told Nylah, let's just end at 1813 and let's fill in all the entries that we can. We have records past 1813. We have 1820s. We have 1830s. We're now starting to get 1850s and 1860s. So it's just a matter of figuring out how all these people kind of connect. And I think those are the highlights on that. So I'm going to go on to, that's the timeline. If anybody's interested in seeing these slides, I can certainly try and make them available. This is definitely a working document, and even the papers are still hanging on the walls in the lab as we are still working on entering new names. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with trying to figure out what more can we learn about James Ashby and his connection to Harry, John, and Mary Ashby. And can we now close that gap between 1796 and 98 and really start to bring these lines together? My next step, I'm going to have to say goodbye to Nylah, but I'm going to be coming through each of the entries for Ashby's from the family search results and add them to this timeline that she has really got me set up with very, very well. And then what family connections can we conclude? So that's kind of where we are. Nylah, thank you again for just, first of all, for participating and presenting your work tonight, and also just being ready to just tackle anything that I kind of gave you. And it's been such a pleasure working with you. And folks, we do have a little bit of time. If people have comments or questions, I can stop sharing our screen so we can see each other. And there we go. Okay, stop share. There we go. And comments, reflections, questions. What can we help answer? So yes, Swan. So Swan mentioned today is Colonel Lafayette Jones Jr. Day in James City County. Just wanted to remember him. Thank you. Thank you, Bray School, and thank you, Swan. I did not realize that. And without his book, we would not have known about the Bray School Scholars being those first teachers in their community. And we know that the Joneses and the Ashbys are very closely intertwined, as Nylah started to mention, that Richard Jones was found also in the baptismal records, having been enslaved by Samuel Spur. So is that where we start to see a Jones family knowing part of the Ashby family? We know the Jones family were also people, free people of color, but where do we see those intersections? So let's see. There was a question, Nylah, of where is Nylah going next? Do you want to take that one?
Sure. So, like Elizabeth has said in the beginning, I am a senior. So this is my last week of school. And I have one more day with her on Friday, which I'm very sad about. But in the fall, I will be attending George Mason University to get my master's in anthropology. So I will start there, and I'll be moving closer to DC and just being around that environment and really start to make those connections and those networking opportunities, and really try to connect with descendant communities and really tell the stories and preserve the histories of enslaved African Americans here at the United States or in America, period. Yeah.
Yeah. She has a very bright future ahead of her. That is for sure. And the research is really going to continue. We felt like we were working as fast as we could with new records coming online as fast as we could. We definitely spent several hours at the Rockefeller Library going through those York County Record Project cards. And for those of you who are interested in researching, all of the Rockefeller Library is free to use. In special collections, all you need to do is just email them to make an appointment. And there are cards for pretty much everybody that was named in those the wills and the order books, the judgment books, and there's card and even Bruton Parish Register. And those are the cards that Nylah was able to use to really look at the Cole line and the Spur line. So I'm reading through questions now. Oh, you're welcome. So anybody else? We've got a little bit of time. Got 5 more minutes. We are going to take a break. I should let you know.
I'll just say real quick in case Nylah didn't see my earlier comment, but you did a really great job, Nylah. This is Renata Sanders. And I said, I know who I'm calling the next time I need some help on one of my projects. So stay ready.
Thank you so much. Yes,
Great
please
job.
connect with you. So please let me know.
Oh, I will.
Okay. So there's a comment from Chantal. I'm going to go ahead and read this out. I know this is off topic. It may not be actually, but I just want to share that Elizabeth Armfield is my 5th great grandmother, and her children that attended the Bray School, James and Daniel, are my 4th great uncles. I just received the news that through my research, Elizabeth, that I was accepted to DAR. I will get her national number in I will get a national number in May. Well, congratulations. That is wonderful. That is terrific. And we should have a conversation about the Armfields and Bray School Scholars. I would love to reach out to you. Congratulations.
Thank you. I would love that as well.
Okay, great. Oh, I love this. All right. Well, folks, if there are no more questions or comments, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Thank you so much to Nylah, of course, for a wonderful presentation. And thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. We're excited to have you be a part of this journey. And this really is a journey because this is not a sprint. So we're in for the long haul on this. But please stay in touch with us for the latest news and happenings with the William and Mary Bray School Lab. Please be sure to check out our website. We have new information going up on there. Student projects have been loaded up. More oral histories are also available. And please sign up to receive our bulletins. It's Bray School Bulletins. It comes out, I think it's every other Friday. And we'll be back again in June. We're taking a break in May. We'll be back again in June. We hope to see all of you then for another session of talking genealogy and talking Bray School stories. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.